So here's a question for you. Are you tired of conceding goals like this? Well, worry not, because in this video we're going to show you how to make goals like that a thing of the past. Now, it's fair to say that during my own stream save, I'd been having a little bit of a wretched time. I was on a terrible run of form, and I kept conceding the same kind of goal over and over again. And it was the ball in behind my defence. Sometimes it was a high ball over the top that was doing the damage, and I was just dissected, giving the opposition easy goals. And other times it was through balls along the ground that were doing the damage, but the opposition got in behind me regardless. Even a 36-year-old Danny Drinkwater seemed to be able to race in behind my defence and score. And I found that this was particularly a problem that I was experiencing later on in games, perhaps when my team was getting a little bit tired. This all conspired to me going on a terrible run of form during a season that was meant to be a push for the playoffs or even automatic promotion. Now on stream I started hunting around for answers, trying to find ways that I could amend my tactic to stop conceding that killer ball in behind my defence. But if anything, I think I actually started to make things even worse than they were before, and the problems continued. But before we get into the cure, pause the video and drop a comment down below telling us what kind of goals you're currently conceding in your own FM23 saves, and who knows, it could be the inspiration for a future video. Now, my instincts to try and deal with this problem was to try and reduce the space behind my defence by dragging my defensive line down and clicking buttons like drop off more to try and get players sweeping in behind their own back line to reduce the amount of space that the opposition had in behind our back four. Then a genius from my stream chat told me that I might be attacking the problem wrong.
Negative action cause suffering.
Look at this goal, for example. Is the problem really that a player raced in behind my defence, or was the problem much earlier in the move? Well, this is Mike, everybody, and Mike is the person who was in my stream chat suggesting that I might be looking at the problem the wrong way. Now, Mike never gives me the answers to my tactical problems, but he has a knack of asking me the right questions that allow me to solve the issue myself. And in this instance, Mike was asking me to have a look again at the goals I was conceding from balls in behind, but try and spot problems occurring much earlier in the move. So when I was trying to analyse the problem, I would be pausing the game here as the opposition striker has already got in behind my defence, and he runs free and scores. But maybe if we rewind the play, we might be able to spot that the issue actually occurred much earlier in the move. Maybe the problem is not the man in behind the defence, but the man that plays the through ball that he runs onto. Now here you can see the opposition midfielder is in literally acres of space. Now, I may only be playing a two-man midfield, but neither of my central midfielders are anywhere near putting pressure on him, and neither are my strikers dropping deep enough to get goal side of the ball and help out the defence. Now, this gives him all the time and space in the world to play that ball in behind. And as I looked back over the goals that we were conceding to balls in behind, a theme began to emerge where players on the opposition side were left with acres of space. In this move, two players have got all the space in the world to be able to clip balls in behind my defence. And unfortunately for me, the consequences were pretty devastating every single time, and they were ending in the opposition scoring simple goals. So good old Mike, who by this time was becoming my tactical Mr. Miyagi, suggested switching my focus to trying to stop the pass in the first place rather than react to the ball in behind. So how could we do that in this scenario where the opposition have time and space on the ball to pick out those killer passes? Well, if we return to this goal, it's probably the perfect one to analyse. Driving forward in the heart of midfield, Sealy Harris has no pressure on him. In fact, my closest man is probably at least 8 yards away. To prevent this goal, I really need to close off the passing lanes, so that if Sealy Harris wants to play a through ball, it has to be a much lower percentage pass, because I have players in place to intercept the obvious obvious routes that the passer of the ball would like to use. Now, tactically, when I was trying to reduce the space in behind my defence by lowering my defensive line and dropping off more inadvertently, I was probably making things worse. And the reason for that is that dropping that defensive line means that the gap between your defence and your midfield and your attack is actually getting bigger. By lowering the line, I'm actually giving the opposition more space to play in. So although the amount of space between my goal and my defensive line is reducing, I'm giving midfield players more space in central areas for them to be able to pick out passes. And particularly clicking drop off more will be encouraging my defenders to try and reduce space in behind by retreating to their own goal, but they're increasing the space that's in front of them. So in order to try and reduce the space that opposition players have to play in, it might actually be preferable to keep the line where it is and rather than drop off more, actually try and encourage defenders to step up more. And as the description says, this will give the opposition less room and unchallenged time on the ball. Now, yes, you might be giving up more space in behind, although depending on the block that you're playing, your line might already be relatively deep anyway, even with a standard defensive line. In fact, when my players are tired at the end of the game and I want to reduce the space that opposition players have to play in, I remove the step up more instruction and move my line even higher up the pitch, and you can see how that brings my players closer together and my lines of play become condensed, meaning that even tired midfielders have a better chance of being able to close down the opposition because their starting spot will be closer to them. Now, to help with this closing down of space, changing your mentality can really help. Dropping down to balanced or even particularly down to cautious will mean that your players adjust their mentality and will focus on a more safety-first approach, prioritizing making sure that they stay in shape, making sure they're less vulnerable to counterattacks, and prioritizing keeping men behind the ball. As Mike says himself, the drop in mentality is enough for the front line to close down harder on the deep passes and prevent potential long balls. Either way, I don't know about you, but this feels to me like the perfect time to just hit that little like button below. Helps the algorithm, you know. Now, not only does condensing the play mean that my midfielders are in better positions to try and steal possession, but it means that my defensive midfield and attacking lines are closer together, encouraging them to close off passing lanes, as you can see in this example. And whilst you're at it, why don't you join the thousands of people who've already found that little subscribe button down there and hit the bell so that they receive notifications each time the manager's seat releases a new video. Go on, do it. The safety in numbers. And as you can see on screen, there is still one issue, one glaring pocket of space that we are not filling. And you can see that our midfield 2 are clearly outnumbered by their midfield 3, leaving a man in space every time. Now, why that may not be an issue early on in the game, later on when players are tired, we might not have the legs to cover that spare man. Now, if we continue to close down passing lanes like we have here, we might not get punished. But if we want to make sure, there is one other trick that we have up our sleeve. And that trick could be to sacrifice one of our strikers and literally put them into that pocket of space where the opposition seem to have a spare man. Now, if the opposition have a midfield 3 with an attacking midfielder and 2 central midfielders, we might want to close down that pocket of space with the introduction of a DM. And if they're playing a flat 2 with a defensive midfielder that's starting to create and looks like they could clip balls in behind, we could literally instruct one of our forwards to drop into that space. We could even ask them to press more, mark tighter, tackle harder, and we can even get them to sit on that particular position to try and snuff out the danger. So hopefully by trying to condense the space more or potentially moving our lines up so there's less space in between our midfield, attacking and defensive lines, we might be able to make goals like this a thing of the past. And if you're hunting for more videos to give you tactical insights to FM23, well, this is the video I would be watching next.